So are there any bike MS folks out there? I see you out there. You know, I think it's a hoot that the International Cycling Federation is doing everything it can to get drugs out of cycling, and we're doing everything we can to get drugs into cycling. And we'll continue to do it in new, bold, and innovative ways, won't we? Won't we? That's right. That's right. You know, you don't have to be a cyclist to understand my confusion while at the height of my cycling career in 1991. I had won a gold, silver, and a bronze medal at the national championships that year. And I was getting ready to ride in the women's Tour de France. And my confusion was around how poorly I felt and how off I was on the bike. And for some reason, when I rode my bicycle, my vision was blurring. I had no idea what was going on. I just figured I just needed to bounce back like I always did and get ready to do this 2-week stage race in and out of the Pyrenees of France. You know, as a side note, you might be curious to know that there's a men's Tour de France. I think it's important that we support their efforts too. So as I prepared for and got myself ready for this first stage of this tour called the Women's Tour de France at the time, the first race was a mountain stage. And I was doing everything I could to stay with the leaders. And the harder I worked, the more my vision blurred. And as we climbed higher, the more my vision blurred. And by the time we crested the top of the mountain, my vision blurred so severely, I lost my sight completely. And I rode my bike off the road and crashed pretty severely. What I didn't know then, that I soon came to realize, is that I rode my bike off one road to begin a journey on a new road. I was soon sent back to the States where I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. If you remember back in 1991, there weren't any drugs to treat multiple sclerosis. The world as I knew it had exploded. The purpose and the meaning that I got from being an athlete, something I'd worked so hard for all my life, was gone. And I spent some time passively hoping and wishing I could get my life back, that I could get back into cycling, that this thing would just go away. And I would try to push the symptoms of MS away as well. But things weren't getting better. They were getting worse. Within a 1.5 years' time of my diagnosis, I needed the assistance of a cane. And I needed somebody's shoulder sometimes too, just to walk. Again, my world had exploded. And things weren't getting better as time went on. At one point, my vision blurred at rest. But it was at this moment, at this time, that I made the most powerful decision of my life. And that decision was to live my life, to stop passively hoping and wishing that MS would go away and that I could get my life back. What I got and what I knew, that this was my life now. Blurred vision, wobbly legs and all. And I needed to begin to look forward and stop looking back and stop hoping and wishing that my life was to look forward. There was no spotlighting illuminating the way of how I was going to achieve this. There wasn't a roadmap that was going to guide me. What I was inspired to do is begin to learn and take classes and to read books on personal growth, spirituality, and studying the sciences of motivation. And as I began to do this and began to work it, it was like a new training for me. I really took it on. I began to integrate it into my life. And I began to experience myself on not just an intellectual level, but on a whole level, that I am much bigger than the MS, that I'm a person living with MS. And as long as I kept practicing what I was learning, the better I felt about myself and about my life with this condition. And as time went on, I found myself deeply inspired to deepen my learning and to take this work out into the world and help other people with it. And I thought I'd go back to graduate school and get a master's degree. My challenge was there was no spotlight illuminating the way of how I was going to do this once again. And as I did my research, I just knew I needed to move forward and start looking into what I could do, because I wanted to take the findings of things like behavioral science, mind-body medicine, psychoneural immunology, systems theory, even neurophysiology and life coaching and positive psychology. How can you take all of this and facilitate it in a way that's practical in people's lives? And so I went on and created my own master's degree at Antioch University. And when I graduated and moved out into my work in the world, but an interesting opportunity came to me after I graduated from school. See, I had been on drug therapy then for 6 years. I was untreated for 6 years. And then at that point, I had been on therapy for 6 years. So you see, hope came in therapy, but also what I was doing was having the hope within myself and moving that forward. So as I continued to do everything I could do with what it is I had to work with, the MS wasn't going away, but I continued to work with what it is I had to work with and a deep level of acceptance. Didn't mean that I was always happy with things, but I continued to work with what it is I could do because this was my life. And I found myself with the opportunity to get back into bike racing again, to get back into riding and to even throw my hat into a competitive level. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this as a person with MS. And I wasn't going after being a world-class cyclist again. But I knew that my life with MS and the things that I was learning, I knew that the yeah buts and the what ifs and if onlys, if I entertained those things, I wouldn't be able to do this. And so I didn't ignore those things, but I listened to them. And I knew that I wouldn't have the answers to what the outcome would be, but I chose to go forward. And I've been lucky enough for the last 5 years to be riding my bicycle at a fairly high level. And I'm grateful for this, but what I'm more deeply grateful is, as I continued my work in the world with people living with MS, what gives me much pleasure is to see the lives that are touched and enhanced by my work in the world, by the information that I facilitate, and how it's meeting an unmet need. Because people don't know what they don't know, and if they're taught how to work with themselves on a holistic level, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, they can identify what's important to them and begin to work with the obstacles, because that was the calling for me to move forward with my life. You know, the gospel according to Nike says just do it. But we're not always given a guidebook to show us the way. And it's deeply moving for me to see how the information that's provided has assisted people to move beyond their own challenges, and sometimes it's what lies between their two ears. And I'm deeply grateful for the Greater Washington chapter to allow me to teach my classes and to facilitate my work with them. And what I see is a mighty crew of champions with deep care and deep gifts to bring forth into the world. You know, I don't know of a champion who doesn't face obstacles, who doesn't face uncertainties, and who doesn't doubt themselves from time to time in their abilities to get the thing done. But they continue to move and they continue to act, to bring forth the gifts that are in their heart and mind. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for stretching and moving, even when it's uncomfortable, to create the world that we want to see in regards to MS. So thank you very much. Thank you.